But I do think it still is a valid question to have because,
Yeah.
and again, you sort of experience it in different ways. Like, like I didn't really care about that conversation anymore growing up. But like now I have kids, and now they, some of their friends don't go, and some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And how do you sort of engage with it? And I feel like, although like maybe the conversation isn't as like robust as maybe it was a decade or two ago, there still just is a lot of unease. Like I still,
Yeah.
and I don't like I'm pro trick or treating, as you can probably tell. Like I
Yeah.
grew up trick or treating. My kids go trick or treating, but I don't think that it's not valid either. Like I don't think, like a day that's sort of there is some connotations like this, the whole spooky aesthetic, and I
Yeah.
mean some of the costume. There are things around Halloween that I don't think it's entirely silly for Christians to be like, is this appropriate? Is it
Maybe.
better to like refrain from this? Like,
Yeah.
like what do you like? What are some of
Yeah. I
your
mean, I think it's. I don't. I think it is valid to maybe be on guard. Yeah, during Halloween because there are some maybe more nefarious and scary and gory aspects of it. But I also think, and we've said this before, but it's kind of what you make of it. And I think kids dressing up like superheroes or perhaps their favorite animated princess, like I think it's just a way to have fun, and I think it's a way for kids to be kids, and like we had even at our church we had a what's now the rage. I think like I don't know how many people go trick or treating, but I think everyone goes trunk or treating, and it's kind of interesting how like that has I think changed a lot of sort of the Halloween stuff and the conversation is like you're not really like I don't know too many people who like go into neighborhoods and trick or treat now, but it seems like every church on every corner has like a trunk or treat between now and Halloween, and it's sort of like kind of turned Halloween on its head a little bit.
well, yeah, 'cause we've sort of, at least in our context of like we're in Georgia, like it's funny because like the narrative was always that Christians are sort of against Halloween. It's very like, and like now it's the narrative has almost become like Christians are like leading the charge. Like they won't call it Halloween.
No, fall festival.
Yeah, family fun fall festival or whatever they,
Yeah.
where we happen, it's like the day or two before Halloween, and we all
Yeah.
dress up in costumes and give out candy and pumpkin bags, and
Yeah.
but it's not Halloween though. It's
Yeah.
family fun fall festival. But it is funny that it's become like because I'll still take my kids out most years we have like to go trick or treat in the neighborhoods, and like down here it's just hard to find like it's almost not where like, you go to a neighborhood and there's houses that are doing it, but like it's not like when I grew up, like every house,
Yeah.
you just clean up in your neighborhood. Like we'll have to drive around, and like it seems like some of the enthusiasm, and then like COVID and some different things have sort of
Yeah.
derailed the momentum. But like you said, but like churches are still many churches like are now the place to go, where it's like hey, and there's advantages to that too. Like it's
Yeah.
a contained location. You kind of trust, even if you're not a church goer, like you assume that the church will be, the church parking lot is a little safer than like, some random neighborhood in the
Yeah.
dark and people you don't know. And like, and because we, like you said, we just had ours a couple of days ago on Saturday, and like tons of people there. Like we both had
Yeah.
a trunk next to each other. My family was inside out.
We were frozen,
and
as you might expect.
and just being able to love like to me that's sort of what this has become is like I think there's a place to question some of like the aesthetics, and like there's things like I want to let my kids dress up as like there's still things to be cautious about, but it's sort of like in philosophy they call it like the genetic fallacy, and it's this idea that like you don't really judge something today just by where it came from. Like
Yeah.
like if there's like a school that maybe like decades ago was founded and they were segregated or they were very liberal theologically or things, and like not that that's not an important part of the story, but like today maybe they're none of those things. Like there's
Right.
different leadership, different values, like
Different decade or century or whatever.
yeah, and it's sort of like do we avoid that school? And I won't put my kids there because back in the 1800s the school started, the guy that founded the school was a racist, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
But like the principal now is not. Like
Right.
it's like sort of judging based on what it is, and I think for Halloween, in many ways, that's where I land on that. Is like,
Yeah.
okay, you can do a deep dive into like, some of the possible roots of like Halloween and what's connected to the Day of the Dead or this different thing. And for me, it's like, but is that what it is now? Like,
Yeah.
is it this sort of, like when a kid comes to my house and I can see from in costume and, my neighbor, and I give him a Kit Kat bar, like, is that some sort of like ritualistic satanic thing? Or is it just
Yeah.
a community kind of cultural event that we can engage with and like, connect with people? Which seems like that's like, not that there aren't still those that are already drawn to sort of the darker side of it, that maybe still like, yeah, Halloween, like we're gonna go do weird Ouija board stuff on the side. Like, I'm sure there's still people that are
Sure.
celebrating that way, but I think but it's not like that's in the sense, like, it's not like I have to celebrate that way, or that
Right.
most people, the kids coming to my door, are going to be celebrating in that way.
Yeah,
Like,
and I don't think like the majority of people are into that. Like I think there's always going to be sort of the fringe that are into the occult stuff, and like Halloween or no Halloween, they're still going to be into that stuff. And so I think it is more, it's sort of the same with like Christmas. It's like there's some pagan origins of Christmas and Christmas trees and some of these things. It's like, well, yeah, but like I don't think anybody today is celebrating that, and I think it's the same with Halloween. It's like nobody is sort of celebrating. I mean, not nobody, but most people around you are not going to be sort of celebrating, death and destruction and, horror and all of these sort of things. It's like, it's a fun time to play dress up and go get candy, like, and to like see your neighbors and, be together with your community. And I think that, by and large is a good thing.
yeah, and there's, especially with some of the cultural context now, I think there's just a lot of value in those sort of built-in kind of, festivals or not ritual, like routine sort of customary cultural things. Because a verse that kind of that I've always thought of that I think has a lot of similarities to the Halloween question is in First Corinthians, kind of 1:8, where it's the whole debate back in the early church about like meat that was sacrificed to pagan idols.
Yeah.
And it's like, do we eat that meat? Like, and the church was divided over that. Except some were like, hey, I won't turn down a good piece of meat. I'm hungry. And other people that just felt very uncomfortable with like, I know, it's meat, but like it was used in such a dark way that's so contrary to my own spiritual beliefs and convictions that I don't know if I want to even, bring that into my house or consume that or eat that. And I think Paul's response to that is still relevant for us with the Halloween thing. He doesn't dismiss the question, or like he doesn't be like you bunch of soft Christians, just eat the meat. Like, what are you like? It's not like he's very dismissive in that way, but he also just kind of, I think, recognized like, but what is important? Like, is this just meat? Like, is there more to it? Where he says, whether you eat or not, like, said, food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. Essentially just like it's meat. Like if your own convictions make you uncomfortable, stay away from it. If you don't have conviction about that, like it's just meat. Like it's not like there's like dark spirits in that meat. Like eat, don't eat. But I think to him, like his thing was like, I think like unity was like more important than just like conformity. Like he's sort of saying, whether you eat or not, I guess it's meat. That doesn't bring you closer or further from God. But what is more important is like the division and the, turning, making this an us versus them. Like we're the good Christians, you're the bad Christians, or, we're the strong Christians, you're the weak ones that can't do it, can't eat meat. Like I think those sort of things, like that, for him, that was a bigger issue than just whether they eat meat or not. And that's sort of what I feel about Halloween. Like, if you don't celebrate Halloween, then like you're not gonna, there's other things to celebrate. Christmas is coming up, and, Thanksgiving's coming up. Like, it's not the end of the world. If you do celebrate it, like you're not a terrible, sellout Christian that just, adopts the world's dark spirit.
One foot in the world.
You're essentially, you should start, wearing a witch hat or, stirring a cauldron because you're that close into the occult. Like, I don't think it's that. I think like the bigger issue is when it becomes this sort of dividing thing within the church.
Yeah.
But I do think if you do, if your convictions don't lead you away from it, I think it can be a very powerful thing. Like, because even like we did that trunk or treat thing, and I got a message from someone else at our church that like taught some kids in Sunday school, and like he was asking them in a different context about like Disney movies and what their favorite one, and like one of them said like, like, my favorite movie is like Inside Out, and then they got all excited and it's like, and I actually met them, and meaning like they came by our trunk where we were dressed up as all the different emotions. I was dressed as anger, and the kids like, and I met anger, and he was just really nice and made me feel special. And like, I mean, like that warms the heart, like, and like, I don't even know what kid that would be.
And what are the odds that the one time you're nice,
I know,
it's to this kid? Like, wow.
I figured because I was dressed as anger, I could for once not have to act angry. I could express it just through my.
How amazing.
But just things like sort of that. Like,
Yeah.
We had the opportunity. We could have sort of been home, shaking our head, and it's just don't want to be a part of that. And again, I'm not judging if that is what you do, but like, instead we were like, hey, there's people are trick or treating. This is sort of this cultural thing. We have the chance for like 3-4 hours to just have a stream of kids coming through, many who like don't go to church, and like just talk to them and like share and like just bless them in a way. Give them candy. Like, if there's a big line, like I would sort of goof around with them and talk, and like you just don't know the impact of that. And I feel like in so many ways, like that, the value of that is bigger than like that's going to do more positive for the church and Christianity than sort of Christians sort of boycotting or like the dangers of Like, I don't think anyone in the community is like looking at Christians, dressed as like a Disney character and being like questioning our witness, and like, like they must, their God must not really be true if they're going to celebrate Halloween. Like,
right.
But I do think the other side is true of like, hey, this is the church that is actually a part of our community. They're opening themselves out up to us. Like they're not just hiding behind their walls, like, and they're blessing us. And like, a bunch of them will just grab the candy and move on. But like, you never know when God can like actually use that in a way as like a witness in the community.
Yeah. Well said.
And I think too, this like, there are so few moments like that now. Like, there's so few, like there's a bunch of research on that of just like sort of those cultural community building things, like, like things like the mall or the movie theater, all these things that are sort of like the meeting spots, and like the way where we actually like, get out of our house and like meet neighbors and stuff. Now we just, there are less things like that now.
No, for sure.
We're on our screens more and we're not connected. That I think things like Halloween or different, others, not just Halloween, but things like that are still opportunities for the church to just engage with a neighbor like face to face.
Well, and I think there's a reason why a lot of like towns and cities still put on, these sort of yearly festivals, whether it's for Halloween or like Independence Day or Christmas. I think there is still that like desire and that need for community. And I think as the church, what better place to get plugged in and to at least meet and bless the community that God's placed you in. And so I think anytime you can get out and meet people in your community, I think is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, and I think if God only wanted us to, our only allegiance or whatever is like the kingdom of heaven, then I feel like he would just have taken us to heaven. Like he's still placed us like on this earth and like in our physical, communities and towns.
Yeah,
I think like, there still is a responsibility for us to, like, not that we our top allegiance is to God and to, like, the kingdom things, and that's where our priority should be. But like, we should also be a presence in like the physical earthly communities that we are in. So hey, if you do celebrate, if you don't celebrate, be safe. And if you do celebrate, make sure you steal all your kids' sour candies, as I tend to do. But if you